Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're diving into something that trips up language learners and native speakers alike: regional idioms. Now, you probably already know a ton of English idioms that work anywhere in the world. But what's really fascinating is how some phrases are completely locked to specific places, like the US, Scotland, Australia, or South Africa. Today, we're going to put some of these under the microscope, specifically looking at how American phrases stack up directly against their British counterparts.
So that brings up a really great question. Why don't all native English speakers just understand each other's idioms? I mean, it's the same language, right? Well, not exactly. You see, idioms are deeply, deeply tied to local culture, history, and sometimes even hyperlocal sports. When a phrase is born from a specific regional context, a native speaker from across the ocean might be completely clueless when they hear it. To really see how this works, we're going to dive into some very specific American idioms and see exactly how they contrast with British English. It's an incredible way to make your communication much sharper.
All right, let's jump right into our first major theme. Section 1, America's pastime, baseball idioms. If you want to understand American English, you absolutely have to understand that a massive amount of popular U.S. idioms originate directly from the sport of baseball. The game is just so completely woven into the cultural fabric of the United States that the language has permanently adopted its terminology for everyday stuff. When an American is talking about business, relationships, or daily challenges, they're often visualizing a baseball diamond, a pitcher, and a batter. Let's break down some specific phrases.
Take the phrase right off the bat. This simply means you do something immediately. Think about that exact fraction of a second a baseball makes contact with a wooden bat. The ball flies off instantly. There's zero delay. So if you say you knew the answer right off the bat, you're tapping into that exact imagery to say you knew it without a single second of hesitation.
Let's look at another one. Throw a curveball. If you throw someone a curveball, you surprise them with something difficult or unpleasant to deal with. In the game, a curveball is a pitch that intentionally bends and drops right as it reaches the batter, totally fooling them. So in real life, if a project at work suddenly loses its funding, your boss just threw you a curveball. It's an unexpected, tricky situation that you've got to try and swing at.
Next up, we have batting 1,000. If someone is batting 1,000, they're doing something extremely well, way better than they even hoped. In baseball stats, batting 1,000, or 1.00, means you've successfully hit the ball every single time you stepped up to the plate. It's absolute perfection. So if you've completely aced every exam this semester, you are batting 1,000.
And to finish up our baseball theme, we have the phrase, drops the ball. If someone drops the ball, it means they did something stupid or careless. Picture a player standing out in the field, the ball comes right to their glove for the easiest out in the world, and they just drop it. It's a careless mistake that really hurts the team. In everyday American English, if you forget to send that super important email you promised to send, well, you dropped the ball.
All right, let's pivot away from sports for a second and move into Section 2, Everyday American Expressions. These are informal phrases you're going to hear constantly if you spend any time in the US, at the grocery store, hanging out with friends, wherever. First, if someone says they're trying to catch some Z's, they're just talking about getting some sleep. The Z's literally represent the sound of snoring you see drawn in comic strips. Second, if a store is fresh out of something, say tomatoes, it means they've just finished or sold all of their supply. And third, if someone says a piece of advice isn't worth a dime, they mean it has little or no value. A dime is an American 10-cent coin, right? So if it's not even worth that, it's pretty much useless.
Okay, now for the really fun part, the comparative showdown. Section 3, British versus American idioms.
It is so interesting to see exactly how idioms morph when they cross the Atlantic. Sometimes the underlying meaning stays exactly the same, but the actual words change to fit the local culture. For example, if you're stuck doing hard, boring work, how do you describe it? Well, in British English, you call it donkey work, evoking this image of a beast of burden just plodding along. But in US English, it's called grunt work. Both phrases are super evocative, and they mean the exact same thing, unpleasant, tedious labor, but they pull from completely different imagery. This next set really drives the point home. To describe something that makes a good thing even better, the UK uses the icing on the cake, while the US goes with the frosting on the cake. Just a slight vocabulary tweak there. But consider another scenario. To describe something that you find highly annoying, the British idiom is take the biscuit. The American version, take the cake.
And finally, if you cry a lot informally, British English says you weep buckets, whereas American English goes with cry buckets.
Let's look at a few more side-by-sides. If two people argue violently all the time, the UK says they fight like cat and dog, singular, but the US pluralizes it to fight like cats and dogs. When referring to physical money, like notes or coins rather than a credit card, the British call it hard cash, while Americans often refer to it as cold cash. But honestly, my absolute favorite distinction is this last one. If someone is acting very pleased with themselves, usually pairing this with a smug look or grin, the UK describes them as looking like the cat that got the cream. The American equivalent paints a way more mischievous picture. They look like the cat that ate the canary.
So, with all these variations, how do you actually know what to use? Let's move to our final section, using regional idioms safely.
Think of this as your practical survival guide. Mastering these subtle differences really matters, because using the wrong idiom in the wrong country can lead to some extremely confusing blank stares. Idioms that are used mainly in one specific country will often not be easily understood by native English speakers from other parts of the world. You might literally never hear an American baseball idiom when you're traveling in Scotland, Australia, or South Africa.
To reinforce this, there's a great tip directly from our source material that says it is safer to use the idioms in this unit when you are in the appropriate country. Makes sense, right? If you're in London, it's definitely best to stick to taking the biscuit and doing donkey work. But if you're in New York, well, you're taking the cake and doing grunt work. Matching your idiom to the physical region you're visiting is absolutely the best way to ensure clear communication.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer today. I want to leave you with one final provocative question to think about. Which version of English do you actually find yourself using more often? Do you naturally lean towards the British idioms, or have those American baseball metaphors somehow sneak their way into your daily vocabulary? Next time you speak or write, try to catch yourself in the act and see which region's idioms you're actually pulling from. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this fascinating slice of language. Stay curious, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.